What if I told you that all of world history, from the ancient empires right up to the nations we see today, could be mapped out by one single ancient prophecy? Well, today we're digging into a text that claims to do just that. It tells this incredible story of a world crown that was lost, lays out a timeline of flawed human kingdoms, and, you guessed it, predicts their dramatic end.
Okay, so to really get our heads around this, we've got to go way back, right to the beginning. Because the whole point here is that, well, the world wasn't supposed to be like this. The story starts with a perfect dominion that was given to humanity, and then was lost.
And really, it all comes down to this one core idea from the book of Genesis. See, the text we're digging into argues that humanity was originally given the keys to the kingdom, so to speak, complete dominion over the earth, acting as God's perfect representatives. You could almost say this was the first kingdom of God on earth.
And that, right there, is the million-dollar question. What happened? Well, the argument goes that through one major act of disobedience, humanity basically forfeited its right to rule. This wasn't just some small slip-up. It was a fundamental shift in power. The crown was lost, and the world was left to be run by imperfect human systems.
So, with that original dominion gone, the world enters this period the source calls an interregnum, like the gap between kings. This whole era gets a name, the times of the Gentiles. Now, Gentile here just means the non-divine human nations of the world. So the idea is that this is a divinely allowed period where human governments get to have their day, but it's temporary. It only lasts until the rightful heir shows up to reclaim the throne.
So how exactly does this whole period of human rule play out? This is where it gets really interesting. The text points to a famous biblical prophecy that's presented as a complete blueprint for this entire age, a roadmap revealed in a dream to one of the ancient world's most powerful kings. Okay, so this takes us to the book of Daniel and to a dream that totally rattled Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon. He dreams of this massive, intimidating, and brilliant statue. But here's the thing. According to this interpretation, this isn't just some random dream. It's a symbol of how humanity sees its own empires, glorious, powerful, something to be proud of.
And this is how it all breaks down. The statue is basically a timeline of successive world powers. You've got the head of gold, that's Babylon. Then you move down to the chest and arms of silver, that's Medo-Persia. The belly and thighs of brass, Greece. And then these powerful legs of iron, that's the Roman Empire. But notice how it ends, with the feet and toes, this fragile mix of iron and clay. You can kind of see the pattern, right? The metals get less precious, but they get harder, right up until you hit the bottom, with this weird, brittle, unstable mixture.
And those feet. This is really the key to the whole prophecy, according to this text. The source sees this mix of iron and clay as this impossible fusion of church and state that popped up after the Roman Empire fell apart. This whole system, which the text calls Christendom, is presented as an unstable, fragile, and ultimately counterfeit version of the true kingdom of God.
But that's only one side of the coin. The very same prophet, Daniel, gets another vision, and this one provides a starkly different view. Because if that statue was humanity patting itself on the back, well, this next vision is presented as God's honest, no-holds-barred opinion on the matter.
And wow, the contrast couldn't be more dramatic. On one side, you have humanity seeing its empires as this incredible, shining work of art. But from this other viewpoint, these same world powers are shown as four huge, vicious, wild animals coming up out of a chaotic sea. The glorious image is totally stripped away, revealing a vision of raw, violent, predatory power. So yeah, Daniel's vision completely flips the script. Babylon isn't a head of gold anymore. It's a lion with eagle's wings. Medo-Persia is a ravenous bear. Greece is a super fast leopard with 4 heads. And then you get to the fourth beast, Rome. It's so uniquely terrifying, it's not even compared to a real animal. It's just dreadful, strong, with these massive iron teeth ready to crush everything in its path. Now, the interpretation we're looking at really hones in on a specific detail of this fourth beast. It's got 10 horns, right? These are seen as the kingdoms that Rome eventually split into. But then, another little horn sprouts up, and this one's different. The source identifies this as a unique kind of power, a religio-political one, the papacy, which it argues rose to prominence right out of the ruins of that old pagan Roman Empire.
Okay, so after we've seen this whole timeline of human power, from both the glorious and the beastly perspective, the prophecy shifts gears. It pivots to the grand finale. The focus moves away from the kingdoms of this world and onto the one that's destined to replace them all.
And here's how it's all supposed to go down. First, a stone cut out without hands, and that part's important. It means it's divine in origin, not human, appears.
Then, bam, it smashes right into the statue's feet, its weakest point. The impact is catastrophic. The whole thing just crumbles to dust. And finally, that little stone starts to grow and grow until it becomes this massive mountain that fills the entire world.
This quote from Daniel really says it all, doesn't it? All those temporary, flawed, beastly kingdoms, they're wiped off the map. They're completely consumed and replaced by one single, permanent, divine government that's here to stay. Forever. According to this text, that is the final chapter.
So what does this all mean for today? That's the big question, right? If you accept this prophetic map, how are you supposed to interact with the governments around you, which, are still considered part of that big doomed statue?
Well, the position outlined in the text is kind of a two-parter. On one hand, be a great citizen. Submit to the authorities, follow the laws so long as it doesn't contradict God's law, pay your taxes. But on the other hand, stay completely out of worldly politics. The idea is that your job isn't to try and patch up the current system. You're an ambassador for the next system, announcing the coming kingdom of God as humanity's only real hope.
And this brings us to a really bold claim. The source argues that calling any earthly country a Christian nation is just plain wrong. It's a fundamental misunderstanding. From this viewpoint, they are still the kingdoms of this world. They're still part of that prophetic statue that's destined to fall. To label them as Christ's kingdom is, in this view, a serious error.
So, at the end of the day, this whole framework leaves us with a pretty deep thought to chew on. What does it mean to see the world through this lens? To view all of history, every government, every nation, not as a permanent fixture, but as part of a temporary lease of power, a lease that is about to expire? It certainly changes how you see everything, from the nightly news to the grand sweep of history.